and welcome to Spectrum TV. We are on season 2 of Spectrum TV. I am so excited. My name is Karen Tui Boys and I'm your host for this season, and I am so excited to bring incredible guests from all around the world to share their ideas, their tips around our theme this time, which is relationships and resilience. I think this is a really important theme for the time we're in right now, which is, very uncertain. So how do we build these great relationships with ourselves, with our family, with our colleagues? And how do we have that resilience to bounce back and be resourceful to be able to be the best that we can be? So it's all about showing up in the world to be the best that we can be. So over the next 12 weeks, I have, as I said, some incredible guests and experts who are in the field sharing their ideas. I call them people who are in the arena, people who are actually making the mistakes, they're doing the work, they're doing the learning, and people who are going to share from their hearts, because at Spectrum we talk about being at the heart of teaching and learning. So I would love to introduce my first guest today, and she is from the United States. She is right now, it's midnight where she is, and so she has got out of bed to speak to us, and I'm so grateful. So a former English teacher, a new teacher coach. She's currently a communications consultant and the author of 4 books. Oh, let me try that again, 4 books. And she's been involved in, invited to keynote and facilitate and coach all around the world. And she writes for our Teachers Matter magazine, and she was introduced to me by a friend, and then we luckily got to meet at a conference in South Africa in Cape Town last November. So please welcome. Oh, I need to tell you something. She's been honoured and named one of the 18 women all educators should know. So that is like amazing. And so yay. So her name is Jennifer Abrams. And so hi, welcome Jennifer. Well, there we are. Now you're there.
There you are. Hello, Karen. Nice to see you. Even though it's like I'm going to stay awake for it. I'm so happy to see you. Nice to see you in this time of not being able to see you. So it's great.
Lovely to be able to connect, and for you to be able to take some time out of your beauty sleep, which you obviously don't need too much of, to be able to share with us some ideas. And so today we're going to be talking about speaking up, finding your voice, being able to have those hard conversations. And I'm seeing that we've got some people who are telling us already online that they're here. We've got people from Albania, Croatia. If you are listening live, please just put in your details. Tell us who you are. Tell us where you're from, because you can ask questions. We can have an interactive conversation. So it's exciting. But I know, Jennifer, you're really known for your work around having hard conversations, and that's how I really got to know you through that work. And you've been doing this globally. I have to say I live vicariously through your Facebook posts and where you travel and everything that you do. And so those who haven't seen you or know you, and I know you've been to New Zealand a couple of times, how did you come to writing books on hard conversations? Like, where did this interest come?
Yeah. It isn't because I was like excited to have them. That was not the reason. I was raised in the middle of the United States, where there's a state called Minnesota, and I was raised Minnesota nice. And it's really known for not having hard conversations. You just sort of plug through, you walk through the snow, and you don't have those conversations. And I became a teacher, and then I became a new teacher coach. And in my new teacher coach work, I realized as I was transitioning from the classroom to working with the adults is that I had a credential in how to teach students. I didn't have a credential in how to talk effectively to adults. And I had to learn the skills to do that about coaching and facilitation. And so that was something I could build, right? And I'm learning that. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, now I'm really talking to adults about things that I see that are educationally unsound or physically unsafe or emotionally damaging. And I have no skill to do that. And nobody in education taught me how to do that. I think hard conversations are really known for something that people in corporate or business, there are a lot of books about that. If it's in education, it's a difficult parent or a difficult employee. And it isn't just about how do we say things that are challenging for us to somebody else. And so I just wrote myself a workbook. That's how I got into it. It was because there was no book.
So I like that, the need, and so you just learning for yourself to get yourself better and then share it with others.
Yeah, that's what I did.
That's just gorgeous. So what is it that stops people speaking up?
Oh my gosh. I think in education we have so many tensions, and I write about it, that we want to be known as somebody who's likable, that where our identities are deeply connected to being nurturing people, to being humane people. We might fear that somebody would yell at us, and we're not really accustomed to that. We want to do it well, and we don't know how to do things that are sort of not right. And so it's a really bumpy road. I can only imagine right now, because people are doing hybrid learning. I mean, just that kind of like, I don't know if I know how to do it well. So hard conversations, same thing. Oh, am I to have this conversation? Shouldn't it be a supervisor that's having these conversations? Why aren't they doing something about it? There are so many tensions and hesitations and fears that we have around it. And I don't think in our field it is something that we're taught to do, and we just don't want to do it. So there's so many reasons.
I absolutely agree. And I know you've been to New Zealand twice, and we have an interesting culture, I guess, in New Zealand and Australia called the tall poppy syndrome.
Yes.
And that's another reason people don't want to step out, talk up, speak out, because it's like you might get cut down. It comes a little bit from the English heritage of don't rise above your station, right. And don't be bigger than you really are. And so therefore don't speak out. So, but actually in today's world, it's really important that we can have those conversations. We can moan, we can groan, we can, say everything that's wrong with the world, or we can do something to fix it. And I just recently saw two young girls. We're in lockdown in New Zealand. Where I am, we're only in level 2, so we're just social distancing. But in the biggest city in Auckland, they are in level 3. And I saw 2 students walking up our street, going house to house, selling raffle tickets. And I'm like, what do they think they're doing? And it really got me when I saw them going to the old people's home across the road. And I'm like, those people are extremely vulnerable. And yes, there is no COVID that we know of in the city that I live in. However, we still have to be careful. And so I thought I could moan and groan about this, or I could go and have that hard conversation. So I got out of my chair, I walked down the stairs, I went and found the girls on the street, social distancing, and had that conversation. And it's scary. Yeah. It's really scary to be that tall poppy, to be that person, because they probably went, oh, who's that old lady? What's she bragging about? But it has to be said sometimes.
Right. And that is, if that is not, that's not educational and sound, that's physically damaging. That's like physically unsafe. And usually that's the easiest one to have a hard conversation around, because it's about a safety protocol. It is about health and life and death. If it becomes I'm too sensitive, or am I kind of stepping out past my orbit and suggesting your teaching practice might not be research-based, or it might not be useful, or this child might be emotionally hurt, that's even more scary for people, because there's nothing that's really sort of, scientifically proven around something, except for it really is, you can figure out how to have those hard conversations as well. So good for you.
So you bring up a good point there. Are there different types of hard conversations? Could you just do the physical, the emotional? Yeah. What other hard conversations are there to have?
To me, it's if you have agreements, you have norms, you have ways that we should be teaching. There were initiatives that we agreed that we would roll out, that we were going to be mindful of certain benchmarks or certain teaching strategies, and it's not being seen. Or if we as in teams, if you and I had an agreement that we were going to write a book together and we had deadlines, we had work product agreements, and things weren't there. It's not hard conversations could be, they're not yelling. They're just about, I noticed there was this, we had agreed on this. Talk to me about this. That's not okay with me. So it's about sort of stepping out and showing people that you care for the ultimate goal. And chances are, and we could talk about this maybe in the next question, if the agreements are there, if we're all sort of working together around certain understandings, it's a little easier. And I call that having a clarifying conversation first. Got to have that first.
So that makes so much sense because there's a structure and there's a purpose and there's a goal at the other end. Yes. So it makes it easier to have that conversation. But when you don't have that, I guess that makes it feel much more fearful because there's no boundaries.
That's right. And there's no expectations and there's no clarity. I was laughing. I tell my story that I have an ex-boyfriend and I was angry at him because he wasn't connecting with me. So now he's violated expectations I have in my head about what he should have been doing. That's not, and I never articulated that. That's an interpersonal thing. I think that when we're in schools, we have sort of bottom line foundational agreements of best practices, of curriculum, of how we should be working together, of how we need to be in schools together, on what our communications are with families. Those are outside us. And so we can sort of say, these are we had clarifying conversations. Now we need to maybe go into some accountability. I always call it clarity before accountability. And I think we're really not so good on clarity sometimes. Then people say, well, why should I do that? It's just a colleague and they're bothering, they're hurtful in their language. And I don't know, that's professional to professional. And I don't know. That's going to be a slightly less, angry, there's no angry, hard conversation. It was, Karen, if you called me an idiot, I felt disrespected by that. It's a shorter conversation, but we have to be able to find our voice in certain situations, or we're just moaning and groaning and sitting with it. And it causes us to not bring our whole selves. It causes us to not be in psychologically safe environments. And so we've got to be able to build up skills, and there's like little hard conversations and then there are bigger hard conversations. So it doesn't have to be a supervisor, that's for sure. It could be adult to adult, anybody in the school.
It occurs to me that the expectations and making sure you're clear on those, other people know. One of the things that I know that I am impatient about is when people are late.
Yeah.
And even if it doesn't matter, if they said they're going to be here at a certain time, that's what I expect. But often I haven't actually communicated that expectation to them. And it might be 6 or 7, 20, maybe even 100 times they've been late. And then I just go, you're always late. But they didn't know that was my expectation. So, so that makes sense. So what advice would you give someone who is just learning how to speak up and around what matters for them?
I would say try to find what is bothering you and be able to articulate that in a professional way. I think most people sort of kind of go around it. It's not working. I don't like how I'm being treated. I don't like what I'm seeing. If I said I don't like what I'm seeing, you would have no idea what I'm talking about exactly. So specificity and finding words that are neutral, and that's really where I say go back to the clarity of expectations. If you're just starting out, I really ask people to consider what what's the specific thing that they're really frustrated by? And it might take a while. We might have to really coach and circle around that to get to it. And then I'll talk to them and say, that's a reasonable thing to really want somebody to meet you at, or that's really what's right for children. You're not wrong about thinking that that's something to do. And the way you're saying it is really neutral and professional and humane. So it's about getting it to be specific. And then I work with people on doing like a 1 sentence or a 2 sentence, as opposed to making it into something that's so tremendously huge. And we agreed to, and I've experienced that that's not happening. Or when you said this, that was really harmful. Just we practice just really short things. And then if you're really working on stuff, like you'll notice me right now, I'm putting my feet on the ground. We practice sort of some nonverbal stuff too. So it ends up that they are trusting that what they said was professional, that it was reasonable, and that they have the 2 sentences and it won't take more than a few seconds. So we practice on that. And after a while, you build up your strength.
I think that's part of the key. It's the practice, having those short fragments to practice and then practicing them over and over again, practicing them even just by yourself in the mirror or out loud while you're driving the car if you want to have one of those conversations. But having those starters really does help. Yes,
sentence stems, starters, scripts, protocols, scaffolds. That's what I've been putting in my book because I needed it.
Yeah. So you mentioned a book, and I know you're writing right now. And so and I know you've got lots of things in the works, but what are some of the foundational beliefs that you're working from on your new book?
I am so excited about this new book. It's actually about being your best self at work. I'm really interested in, we are professionals, and I understand that we're professionals, but what if you want to step it up? What if you want to be a bigger and better self? What if you want to expand your understanding? There's a psychologist, professor emeritus at Harvard University here in the United States named Robert Keegan. And he has an adult developmental theory about how adults need to develop and how can we be bigger and handle more complexity. And as I think about us being on this platform right now in the middle of this time, we need to be as big as we can on the inside, more mature, able to handle things. You were talking about resilience. So what does it take? And so I'm working on 5 key ideas that I think would help us be better able to communicate at work with each other, knowing our identities, being able to suspend our certainty, being able to take responsibility, not just for our work and our work product, but for our language and our career, being able to work with more reciprocity, really respecting and really seeing a mutuality in our collective, and how do we actually do that aloud, and then how do we build resilience, which is exactly what you were saying. So to me, if we can do that, we can expand our ability to sort of be in the world in a better way. And I think that's an important and worthy task. So that's what I'm writing about.
Yay. I love that. Expanding yourself to be bigger, ready in the world. What was the word? Yeah. One of my mentors that I work with talks about being world class. And it's the same thing, to become a titan in your industry. I was talking to a teacher the other day who talked about being an artisan as a teacher. How do I get better at my art?
Yes.
And the craft of teaching, the pedagogy, what we do every day. And that comes from inside, first of all. And many of the viewers will know that our tagline for our Teachers Matter magazine is professionally and personally. Because I believe the more we grow personally, the better we become professionally.
Absolutely.
So those 5 facets are wonderful about how to become your best self. I love that. And particularly in this time right now when we've got time to be able to maybe pause a little bit more, maybe be able to reflect and really think about how do we want to show up in this world. Yeah. So
that's exactly it. How do we want to show up, and what does it take for us inside to be able to be that? And it's a journey, and it's a developmental journey to be able to do that. So I'm on it.
Yes.
Again, I'm writing a book that I wanted to have as a workbook. So I'm writing a workbook.
I love this. So I'm like intrigued now. What will be your next personal development goal, so that we get to learn from you as well? Jennifer, you talked about suspending certainty, and I think that's really important in today, because there is nothing certain. The world's not certain. I know that we had a talk before coming on live that, we have had the privilege of traveling so much around the world, you far more than me, but we don't even know if that's ever going to happen again, And so, but that preparing to, being able to suspend certainty is about being prepared to be wrong, being prepared to not know everything. So why is that such an important skill?
I wonder, I've been talking to different people. So I was just working in Manitoba, Canada, I'm working with, I'm not traveling there. The Canadians won't even let me in. The border is closed. But I was talking to a woman from north of Winnipeg, in the middle of Canada, way up. And I was telling her about this, and she said, "What a Western idea." And I said, "Talk to me." And she said, "But what are you going to learn if you don't suspend your certainty? How will you communicate with other people and take in their ideas if you don't suspend their certainty? Where are you without humility?" She said, "I've come to the big city." She was talking about Winnipeg, and she said, "Everybody there is just wanting to be right, and they want to advocate, and they don't want to inquire, and they don't want to add to their ideas." And I'm sitting there going, well, what's the point of being in this meeting if we can't learn from each other and make a shared understanding of something, or say, you know what, I hadn't seen it that way. And I just remember sitting back right here at this chair, and I said, it never occurred to me. She goes, "Yes, that's very Western." She was an indigenous woman, First Nations from Manitoba. And I said, again, that would have been me needing to suspend my certainty about why I even think this is right for everybody to build up. But for me, for sure, I still need to not have to jump in and advocate and say, well, this is the right way to go. Slow down and just suspend. It doesn't say give up. I'm not saying give up your opinion. I'm saying suspend it so that you can see everything and then come in. And I think that we need that, or I need that. So that's why it's good.
Which, of course, is what, again, one of my mentors, Art Costa, in The Habits of Mind, talks about all the time, isn't it? Listening with understanding and empathy, being able to suspend your own thoughts for a moment and really hear what somebody says. And another habit, which is questioning and problem posing, and being able to, ask the questions, to be that lifelong learner, which is so, so important.
He is one of my favorites.
Isn't he? He's just so gorgeous.
Yeah.
So what about, how do we help people in terms of their communication when times are so uncertain?
Oh, boy. I think what's interesting, and I'm doing some work, I'm doing my swimming in the deep end. And I wrote this book, Swimming in the Deep End, in 2018, not knowing about any of this. So this is work. This is so much farther out into the ocean. I can't even tell you. But one of the things that I do to talk to people is if we're communicating in uncertainty, as much clarity as we have about what we're saying, the better. The prefrontal cortex right now is we are so in the amygdala. We're so in we don't know, we can't find anything. And so every little thing freaks us out. We're not sure. And so don't add to the noise, try to communicate with positivity, talk about, growth mindset, and we're going to get this. It's going to be okay. Don't worry about it if you're tired, but don't add less certainty to the mix. And so people are saying, well, we're just going to have to do it, get on with it. well, I don't even know what I'm talking about. I don't know. Well, we'll figure it out. And then people get even more nervous. So understand that. And so I talk a lot about just the psychological and biological needs, neurophysiological needs that we've got in certain times. And this is just such an uncertain time. Don't add to it. And I know communication can sometimes add to that because it's not communication.
Absolutely. So you, by the way, for the viewers, please, if you've got any questions, we've got about 5 more minutes with Jennifer. So if you've got any questions, please write them in the chat box. I can see the questions. She can see the questions, and that would be wonderful. And Dorothy's just said very helpful advice. She'd love to have a copy of them in bullet points, which leads me to ask you, because I know that you have a little giveaway for us, and that's your book, or part of your book, or the resources from your book, Swimming in the Deep End, which you spoke about. So tell us about what we might find in that.
So Solution Tree is that publisher, and you can go to solutiontree.com and you can look up me and then look up my book, Swimming in the Deep End, and there are some reproducibles. One of them is a deep end self-assessment. If you're rolling out an initiative or a project, or you've got something that you're going to do, how do you think about that, especially if it's going to be something that is not sort of shallow end? When I think of the safety protocols that your country and my country have to do, and schools trying to roll that out in the handbooks, that's sort of what I'm talking about. And so how do we think before we speak? How do we preempt resistance? How do we respond in humane ways to it? And then how do we sort of have the resilience? So that's on the Solution Tree website. And then I also have my website, jenniferabrams.com, which has some other additional things that if you wanted to read or watch or listen, they speak to other strategies that I'm doing. And so that's all there for you, just easily
Wonderful.
received.
Thank you so much. We'll put it in the chat so that people who are listening and watching can access that, because I have the link. So I'll do that straight after the chat. So thank you. So Dorothy's asking, do you have any strategies for when you're trying to use these new strategies to discuss the situation, but the other person doesn't have the same skills? Because that's a great question.
So they bully you at that moment. I always say I know you have your perspective. I'm just sharing with you mine. Or this is just my point of view. That's all I sort of say. It's a really interesting thing. You're never going to change them. They're going defensive. And they're going to say, well, you always are too emotional, or you're too this. And there are a couple things in my Hard Conversations Unpacked book about that. And I'm not trying to sell that book, but I'm just saying I have the what if they say this to you, what if they say that to you. But for the most part, when somebody does that, I usually say, I just wanted to share my point of view. And I kind of put my hand here and really try to say, I'm on my side of the net. I'm sharing my point of view. This is how I see things. And I just needed you to be aware of it. And I let it go. That person is bullying because they're defensive. They're nervous. They're going to try to kind of make you more intimidated. Just needed you to be aware of my point of view. And then I sit back. So anyway, there's so much more, Dorothy. We should talk, Dorothy.
Maybe you can connect on social media. That would be great.
That'd be great.
Look, Jennifer, thank you so much. I know that it's early morning now for you. It's past midnight. And, in these uncertain times, it's important to be able to find your voice. It's important to be able to speak up. I think there's a lot of change happening internally for many as well. And for me, just personally, that going from an extrovert who's always been out there, who's someone who now doesn't want to have to leave the house. And it's like there are conversations I have to have about that, from being locked down for 6 weeks by myself to moving into work, even being with my family. I've had to have conversations because the noise and the going from a minimalist to a whole wardrobe of clothes again, just silly little things. But actually the conversations I've had to have, particularly with my teenagers, have been really difficult. So these are wonderful strategies and ideas. So thank you so much for helping us. And again, I'll put that link for everybody else in the chat when we're finished. So thank you.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
And you too. Have a great big sleep now.
No, I will. I will. Have a great rest of your evening. Thank you for letting me to join you. I just loved it. Thank you.
Thank you. So while we're finishing up, I want to let you know that next week I have the amazing Greg Ward coming to share the Spectrum studio with me. And he is a professional speaker. He is an MC extraordinaire, and he is an incredible guy who's stepping into his own power. And he's going to be talking about vulnerable leadership and what is that self-leadership idea and the place where you can start to be able to build that internal resilience to build better relationships with others. So next week, same time, same place, 7 o'clock. I'd love to see you here. So thank you so much for your watching, and go well, stay safe, and keep learning.